Welcome into the Husker247 Podcast. I'm Mike Schaefer, joined by Michael Bruntz, Brian Christopherson. Here on Thursday morning, it is the NFL Draft Day kickoff. The draft is down in Kansas City. Bruntz, how much money would you have to be paid to go stand down there for the NFL Draft? You have to be there the entire time. You have to stand the entire time. You're surrounded by Chiefs fans who just won the Super Bowl. What amount of money would you need to do this?
All the money in the world could not get me to stand down there. It would be even worse. Denver doesn't even have a first-round pick. So, what am I doing down there?
You're just there. You're hanging out amongst the draftees.
That's the first I'm hearing, too, about the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl. That was new to me.
Sorry. I broke through your impenetrable defense on just ignoring the NFL playoffs last year.
Chiefs Dome.
BC, your level of interest, I feel like between you and Brunch, you'd be more likely to attend an NFL draft. But it's not like this is a significantly high bar to clear. It'd be like if Brunch is a 0, you might be a 0.5 or a 1.
Yeah, that'd be accurate because I've been so fired up about this portal stuff, man, that I forgot the day was even the NFL draft until about 9:15 this morning.
Yeah, well, it's here, whether we want it to or not. The future of the Minnesota Vikings could be decided tonight. That's how you have to feel about it.
They're going to take a guard. Like when you say,
I would love if they took a guard. I'd celebrate a guard.
We're going to take a guard.
I'd be thrilled. Give me a guard.
Okay, I got one quick maybe fun draft question. Was there one pick in your lifetime for your team where you just yes or no, it could be either side of it, where you were just ecstatic or infuriated, but in the moment it was like, this is a big deal?
Adrian Peterson I was over the moon about that in was it 2007 draft, because there was a lot of Brady Quinn talk and Ted Ginn Jr. talk and just stuff that I don't think I was interested in. And for it to end up being Adrian Peterson, was thrilled by that. I also distinctly remember being very fired up about Teddy Bridgewater at the end of the 2014 draft. And I still feel like that's a great what if. If he never tears his ACL, they probably win the title in 2016. Everybody knows that. So,
what about you, Bronco Brunts?
Tebow got him pretty gassed up.
Tebow got me gassed up in a bad way. I remember where I was when Denver selected Paxton Lynch. Not in a good way. I remember where I was sitting, and I remember having to kind of do one of these, like whenever you swear a little too loudly and there's kids around. So that's probably the most recent one.
Who was the pick where John Elway thought it was a good pick like a year or two later, and he went back and got after a guy on Twitter?
That guy was clapping on him about Trevor Siemian, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah. And Elway remembered it and came back like 2 years later for some reason and got after him. But
yeah. BC, was it Fran Tarkenton for you that you were pretty fired up about?
Yeah. That's real hilarious.
Love that Mick Tingelhoff pick.
This sounds like oh, I know stuff others don't, but Randy Moss, like when I couldn't believe. I was in high school and I couldn't believe when Randy Moss was kept hanging on the board. I mean, he was like the 18th pick or whatever, and he would be one, and Adrian Peterson was definitely one. I knew Adrian Peterson was gonna rip up the league. So and then the funny ones are like the ones you try to talk yourself into, but you even know that night it's not, like Christian Ponder. Yeah, that one. Definitely.
We both knew at that time. We were like, maybe if everything comes together, he can be a pretty good game manager. It'll work out. It'll be great. Randy Moss is why I'm a Vikings fan. I basically just decided I was going to go wherever Randy Moss went, and it just so happened to be the Minnesota Vikings. So that's the exact rationale there. All right, let's get into some portal talk. I'm gonna let you guys decide how you want to start this. Do you want to talk about the guys that Nebraska had go into the portal, or would you like to discuss what's happening next door in Colorado? Both things will be talked about, but you can decide the order of the events.
We'll start with Nebraska. How on a scale of 1 to 10, this is a radio guy question, how big of a surprise was Stephon Wynn Jr. and how big of an impact will that be on Nebraska in 2023?
A 5 and a 3.
So a surprise, not much impact.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at with it. Like, I think what happens sometimes with the transfer portal is that we completely sort of overtalk how much someone was going to be involved in whatever it was. Like, I think Stephon Wynn would have been nice depth for Nebraska, but as I wrote yesterday, I'm not entirely sure that it behooved the team to give him a bunch of reps if he's only marginally better than guys that they think are going to be there for a long time. And I think they really like their defensive line class that they put together. I think that they're intrigued by Raquan Buckley and some other guys. And I just think if you're looking at the overall outlook of building a program moving forward, Stephon Wynn's 1 year here and likely 20 snaps a game or less could be used towards someone that's going to be here for a lot longer that has maybe more development ahead of them. And I don't think that there's that big of a loss for Nebraska with Stephon Wynn, whereas he's probably looking to go. He's got 1 year left. He's looking to go play somewhere where he's going to get more snaps. That would be my guess.
I would say I was surprised by it. I'd say it was a 7 on the surprise scale and a 4 on the factor scale. I that was one I just like, as I thought about like who could go in. Nobody else is in any way, as we'll get to the names, shook me at all. But Wynn was like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, I did one of those. It wasn't like we've had other portal examples where it's like, it seems like everything's on fire around you for a hour or two with people's opinions on it, and this certainly wasn't one of those, but it was a surprise to me.
So we heard a lot this spring about Nebraska playing defensive linemen across multiple spots. Elijah Judy, I think he was the most prominent one in my mind, at least, talking about how he was learning every spot, including nose. Do you guys feel like the way that this line group is currently constructed, which I believe if you have Machachok on the defensive line gives them 14 scholarship defensive linemen, do you feel like they have enough? Do you feel like they have enough in the middle specifically to make this defense work and be stout against the run? Because I guess that's when I start thinking about concern with Wynn, it's okay. You're going to have Ty Robinson there. You've got Nash Hutmacher probably taking a step forward. I think Judy can probably play in there a little bit too. Is that enough, given that we know that Matt Rule wants to play a lot of defensive line? I mean, he said he wants to basically do hockey line changes if he can. So is there enough there?
For me, yes. I feel okay about it. I'm not ruling out the idea that sort of like Prince Will and Cam Lenhart, that a guy like Riley Van Poppel can't get involved into this whole thing too. And so I think because they like a lot of these guys, they don't want to allocate a bunch of snaps to someone who's only got 1 year left. And I don't think that they view it like I don't think they view Stephon Wynn the same way that the Scott Frost staff would have, where the whole thing is we have to win these games right now. So we have to have this piece right now. Whereas if they get 70% of Stephon Wynn from, Elijah Judy and Riley Van Poppel and whoever else, like, I think that's more valuable for the overall program moving forward. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm talking bad on him, but at no point last year was I like, oh wow, look at Stephon Wynn go. He was fine. He was a complimentary piece on the defensive line. Like, I don't think the production that you're going to get from him is so large that you can't make it up with some other guys. And I can understand why you would want to get those reps to younger people.
Yeah. I don't know. I am changing my view a little bit because of the freshman factor that we saw even in the spring game with those guys. And I do think, as Schaefer is pointing out, there is a guy or two still incoming that I think could be involved in the fall. And I would agree. Wynn last year was sort of one of those guys who I don't know what his snap count was. I was trying to look it up actually. He got more snaps than I thought actually during this season, but he didn't make a ton of wow plays, that's for sure. But yeah, I think Matt Rule's going to play the long game a little bit more than the previous staff, and I thought that was pretty well put by Schaefer.
So Stephon Wynn goes in. Brunch, you want to run through the list of who else is entered the portal right now as of 9:54 a.m. on a Thursday?
Yeah, so Stephon Wynn went in yesterday. Logan Smothers testing the waters for what's out there. Also, Richard Torres. So you're down 2 scholarship quarterbacks. Not really surprising on either of those guys. Smothers, I was a little curious about how he would move forward with that, but both of those guys are in there. Sean Hardy, also in Victor Jones Jr., and I'm trying to see if I'm forgetting anybody else. Smothers, Braxton Clark was the other one. Braxton Clark leaving. That officially closes the book on Nebraska's 2018 recruiting class, which ended in 2 draft picks, Cam Jurgens and Cam Taylor-Britt, the 2 Cams, and Adrian Martinez, probably the other noteworthy member of that class as a 4-year starting quarterback. But I don't think any of those guys were particularly big surprises to anybody when you were kind of doing the mental math on who might leave.
I'd like to see Braxton have success somewhere. He's a guy who was always sort of on the fringe. I mean, you remember the first was it that fall camp, maybe that's freshman year when he was being talked about like on the 2 deep by Travis Fisher. So he was always sort of right there, but there was like 2 or 3 guys in front of him. There was an injury at one point, I believe. So he was always sort of like that 4th or 5th guy. Nice guy to have, definitely on the roster, and I think has some quality snaps still in him. So I hope he does find a good landing spot. I think he is an example when Rule talks about, the portal can be good for some guys. It definitely could for someone like him because he's a guy who I do think has some game.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting because there's other teams, in our network. I was just talking with someone and their team desperately needs cornerbacks. And it's just like, well, that's randomly a position where Nebraska feels probably pretty good about what it has. And so it's always, you think so much about internally, like, oh, Nebraska doesn't have this, Nebraska doesn't have that. Well, there's Big Ten teams on their schedule that are in the same boat that either have to go into the portal to find these people or have to make do with what they have on their roster. So I think sometimes you get so focused on what your team doesn't have, you sort of forget that there's a lot of incomplete rosters still around the Big Ten and especially around the Big Ten West. The one that I think I'm going to be most curious about his landing spot, and maybe the door is open for a return to Nebraska, I don't know, but Logan Smothers. I mean, I would love to see him in sort of a more option-based offense and less of whatever Mark Whipple was running last year that wasn't going to be a good fit for him. I saw on our message board someone suggested, like, if he was at a Coastal Carolina, what that would look like. And I think, didn't Jamie Chadwell go to Liberty?
He's at Liberty.
Maybe
Tim Beck is at Coastal now.
Yeah. So, maybe he ends up at a Liberty or wherever. I think Logan Smothers can work in a certain sort of environment. And I always have a lot of respect for him. I mean, he's a really tough kid. He was someone who felt very strongly about Nebraska, and I think he went out and got a degree. And so I'm happy for him. I mean, he made this the best that he could. And I distinctly remember last year people being pretty surprised when he just came forward and he's like, yeah, I'm not leaving. Like, I'm not going in the portal. I want to stay here. I want to play at Nebraska. And it just hasn't worked for him. But I hope the best for him. And I'm really going to be curious, like, where he ends up. And I'm going to want to watch him play. He's just one of those guys that I feel, pretty strongly about. So happy for him. And he just, there's just sometimes where it's just not the right fit at Nebraska. It doesn't necessarily mean that either side is wrong. It's just there's somewhere else that's probably going to be better for a guy like Logan Smothers. Do you guys still get the sense that Nebraska is going to go beyond 85 as multiple players go into the portal? I think I was pretty convinced that they could end up, looking to add another player or two out of the portal for themselves, but didn't Matt Rule sort of downplay that after the spring game?
He was asked specifically about offensive line and what if they needed to add somebody there. And I thought he kind of shut it down. I mean, basically said, we've got who we've got. We're going to coach them. You got guys coming in, Sledge and Knutson, and there's one other I'm blanking on from that group that Mason Goldman potentially on that line. So yeah, I mean, I guess whenever spring ended, it was kind of like, oh man, there's a lot of work to do to get down to 85 by August, and it's like, okay, the portal's been open at least as far as Nebraska is concerned. This is going on day 4. They're already sitting at 92, and if you're just kind of looking at various positions, I don't think it's going to be that tough to get to 85, especially when you have, the rule where you can basically keep a guy on scholarship, but just not on the team as a counter. So Matt Rule's been pretty confident for a few months now that, like, you guys outside the walls are a lot more concerned about scholarship numbers than we are inside the walls. And, maybe if there's somebody at a position where they need somebody in the portal that makes sense, they'll pursue it. But I didn't get the sense that they were going to go into the portal like lock, stock, and smoking barrel looking for guys.
Yeah, it always sort of felt to me if they had something available that they would kind of, if there was someone that caught their eye. But I think they're sort of, as you said, this is what they have, and they still have pieces coming in. I mean, there were some freshmen that maybe they think can play that aren't going to arrive until, late May or early June. So I think that's certainly a portion of it as well. What are your thoughts, BC, as to where things sit and with Nebraska's roster and potential portal additions?
Yeah, we're doing this podcast. I'll say it this time because it matters, maybe, as of Thursday morning. So there's 92 right now. And I mean, I suspect it could be below, 90 by Friday morning. And so
maybe before the end of this podcast,
who
knows?
Yeah.
Very breaking possibly. News.
No, I don't have any breaking news.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
But it could be breaking news. That's the point.
Yeah. I thought you had something there. That was going to be perfect timing.
Sorry.
No, the number's not a worry. I don't think it ever has been, really. Like, even I forget what press conference, if it was in December or January, when I asked Rule about, like, just the roster size, because everybody was buzzing about it on the outside. And you could tell at that point, he's like, it'll work out. And it was, it was not just said like in a coach speak. It was just like, we're going to go through our winter program. It's not going to be for everybody. Guys are going to see where they stand too, and they're going to want fresher opportunities if they're not high on the depth chart. And that's exactly how it's playing out. The portal's not always a curse word. It can be really good for some people. And like we've mentioned a couple of them, like I have the same sort of respect for, like, Logan Smothers. He's a guy who, a couple years ago could have went in the portal, and I think people would have been like, yeah, that makes sense, like, if he wanted to. And he's stuck around longer than a lot of people would. I always wonder what would have happened that offseason had Nebraska hung on in the fourth quarter of the Iowa game that he started. Not saying that would have changed everything, but that's one of those little what ifs in Husker football. What the narrative would have been if they had beat Iowa by like 10 points that day, but they had the fourth quarter meltdown. So there's always these little twists and turns that change guys' careers and or make it not happen for them. And I hope the best for all the guys that are going in, but I don't think to this point Nebraska's lost someone where people are worried, and it's happening pretty naturally. What the number count is dwindling sort of in a way. It's like, okay, that makes sense. He left, and they're going to get there, aren't they? So it's good.
Brunt, how much of this do you think is because previously Matt Rule was at a place where you got to get from 90 to 53, by the start of September? Like he's sort of accustomed to your roster is going to dwindle at some point, and there's going to be some filler, and you're just going to move on from it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's fascinating, especially at Nebraska, how people have managed, coaches have managed rosters. I feel like, with Bo and the Riley staff, you were always kind of playing from behind in terms of the numbers of scholarship guys you had.
Really hard to get to the 85, and
like
now
you were
sitting at 92.
Yeah, you were struggling to get to 80 at times. It felt like, Scott Frost, I felt like as time went on, I think did a little bit of a better job of just keeping the numbers of scholarship guys where they probably needed to be. I think with Matt Rule, I guess like, the attrition, when you have guys who are going into the portal who you're like, okay, it seems like an easy conversation, right? Like you're fourth on the depth chart right now. You're probably not going to play for at least a couple of years. If you want to play, you need to go elsewhere. That seems pretty manageable. I don't know if his, history is played into that at all, but it's not, I guess it just seems like, I think they're going to do a pretty good job of managing numbers. I think you're going to see a smaller walk-on group overall. I think you're going to see them right around that 85 number at all times. They'll probably oversign when they can. I think they're going to be pretty smart about it, especially if, they want to be a developmental program. You want to take advantage of as many of those scholarship opportunities as you have. I mean, you don't want to just be leaving like 7 scholarships on the table like we've seen happen at Nebraska at times.
All right. Well, speaking of managing scholarship numbers, that's an easy segue. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but BT, what are your thoughts on what we're seeing in Boulder right now with Deion Sanders and I think 18 remaining players on Colorado's roster?
Well, I guess he's playing a long game too, and I'm not here to opine that he's going to fail over the course of 2, 3, 4 years. I think about it more in our bubble from the vantage point of what's that team look like for an important game Nebraska's playing on September 9th. And it's going to be pretty, I mean, they're a team, let's put it this way, they're a team I would want to play in the non-con right now, because basically when they get to August, it's going to be spring ball 101 for them, with a whole new roster, trying to get to know each other. I wrote about this on our site the other day, but Rule had a quote, and he was talking just about his team, by the way, but it was about how hard this spring was for guys, and the fact that they don't really know what coaches are asking of them yet. They're figuring it out as they go through the spring, and next year it's going to be a whole lot easier. That would apply to anybody who's taking over a new program. So that's what Colorado is going to be doing on August 12th, in a practice, is basically having all these sort of beginnings of a chemistry formulating within their roster and how they do things. And they're going to have a game 3 weeks after that. It's just going to be very tough for them this year. And that's what interests me, since Nebraska is playing them this year. Maybe it's going to work for Deion Sanders over the long haul. I'm not here to say it's not. But I do wonder what the effects are going to be of talking over your team, because guys on the outside pay attention to that aren't on that roster too. And they've seen that he's talking over his team about what's coming and not necessarily what's in front of him. And if you give me the 2 ways of doing things, of course, this will sound like I'm sucking up, but it's just how I feel. I would pick Rule's way, where you're like, I'm on the team I have right now, like that's who I'm looking at. And I also think back to what Bruns was answering before, that makes it easier for these portal discussions when guys are leaving Nebraska, if they're third or fourth team, if they feel like this guy actually gave me a legitimate shot. He didn't talk over me. I got my reps, but they still saw me as third team. I can live with that. And we have the conversation and we part ways. I think that's a lot different than some of the departures you're seeing out of Colorado. I've noticed some of those guys don't mention the coaching staff at all in their exit comments, which is different than it usually is on those things.
Yeah. Brunch, anything you want to add?
No, they just had another guy go in. That's 67 in this recruiting cycle. I thought Brian
like the hashtag real quickly. Do you like the hashtag we leaving? Because that's what someone posted today.
I thought Brian hit on it pretty well. I mean, I think what's tough is, we've seen. I'm trying to think what like the best kind of overhaul via transfer portal has been. Would you say Michigan State, like Mel Tucker, that first year probably was the best that they've done? Just
it's pretty good.
Wholesale.
Florida State, I think the last couple years have been really active, really heavy with it. Yeah, but there's not many teams that I feel very comfortable. Like there's individual pieces, yes, but like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 transfers that really help elevate you. Now, the difference, of course, Colorado is just trying to get past 1 and 11, but still, it is a very fascinating experiment going on in Boulder.
It has. I think it's tough when so they had a couple guys that went in the portal that were like 3-year starters at Colorado, and I know they're 1 and 11. They were not very good last year, but you kind of need some of those guys around, right? Like,
I think so.
I think that's what you're going to be missing. Like it's when everybody's kind of a mercenary, what's the thing that grounds everybody there? I mean, I'm curious to see how that plays out on the field. If let's say they fall behind early to TCU, what does that look like in terms of just guys continuing to play together and things like that? I've little doubt that they're going to bring in talented guys. I think, Deion Sanders has that kind of pull. But in terms of like a long-term, path for success, I don't know that this is necessarily it. I'm skeptical. I'm not willing to bet that it's going to be a complete flop, but it's going to be tough sledding right away, I think.
Yep. All right, let's take a quick timeout. We'll come back. We'll talk about the NFL draft, how it relates to Nebraska. We can get a baseball update after what feels like the fourth disastrous loss in a row for Nebraska. I know there's a win in there, but it's pretty ugly last 5 games for Nebraska baseball. So we'll let Brunts pump some sunshine about what's going on with Will Bolt's boys as well. We'll talk some NFL draft when we return. Okay, NFL draft, Kansas City, Nebraska, no one's going day 1. Maybe. Do either of you feel like Trey Palmer ends up as a day 2 pick? Day 2 is 2nd and 3rd round, I believe. Everything else is Saturday, 4th through 7th. Can Trey Palmer sneak into the 2nd or 3rd round? Now, people are going to feel like this isn't likely, whatever. We just saw Cam Jurgens end up as a 2nd round pick last year, so it's not like Nebraska hasn't had someone go in day 2 anytime recently. Can Trey Palmer be that guy? Brian Christopherson.
He could be. I would say guessing with the blindfold on 3rd or 4th round is where I would put him. So
do you think he's probably right on the borderline then?
Yeah, he could be one of those guys who on Friday night at the end we're writing those stories where like he's the 3rd best wide receiver available Saturday morning, on this site or whatever. I could see something like that. Yeah.
I am a sucker for reading those stories, even if I'm not following the draft that closely. So after the 1st round, I love reading everyone's like best available 2nd round, talent. And then what I want to do is start bookmarking those and then come back to them like 4 years later and be like, yeah, nope. Oh, that was a good call. That's what I need to do. Yeah. I've never really done that, but I am a sucker for that. I will be reading it at midnight tonight or whenever, early tomorrow morning. I am the type of person that gives them those precious clicks that everyone talks about.
You could Elway someone. You could stockpile that stuff and come back 3 years later and just randomly get them on a Tuesday in May. Yeah.
Nice call, Todd.
Yeah. Just go after some random guy who's working in a machining shop who had a draft opinion or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Brunch, what are your thoughts on Trey Palmer? Like, do you think if the Broncos were to add him to their stable of wide receivers, it's about the only thing that they have going for him at the moment? Would you be excited about this?
It depends when he was added. If he was added
late day 2,
let's say early day 3, I'd feel pretty good about that.
Okay.
I think that's where I would probably fall. I also think that Denver's got a little. They got the head coach going for him. That's the other thing they got going.
Oh, sorry, yes.
With all the draft picks they traded for him, I would say probably early day 3. I'd feel pretty good about that. I think the speed is there. The ability to be a deep threat is there. I wonder a little bit about there's been questions about just route running ability, hands, on the intermediate stuff. But I mean, he's got speed. I'm a sucker for a little speed on the outside, and I wouldn't hate that on day 3.
If I set the over/under at 1.5 for Nebraska players selected, because I feel like that's the only real number that you could use here. Brian Christopherson, you going over or you going under?
I'd probably go under. I think it's going to be Palmer and a lot of quality, and I mean this, guys with free agent options who could make a run. I think Caleb Tanner's interesting. Like, I could see him in the right place. I think O'Shawn Mathis will have a shot. Like, I wouldn't rule out O'Shawn Mathis if someone really loved him, jumping in on him late, but guys like that, I think are going to get with the team. And if it's just a matter of if they fit just right in that defense, they find the perfect marriage and then it could take off. But I'm going to say only one pick.
Brunt, are you agreeing with BC or are you going opposite here?
I'll not just for the sake of debate, I'll go over. I think
embrace it.
I think Mathis goes late. I think he'll be a team's going to be like, we want him as a priority free agent. We want to make sure we get him, and they'll jump in late. I think when you looked at what he did during the showcase game that he was in, I mean, he was playing defensive tackle. He's got production from his time at TCU. He's a guy that can probably play in multiple defenses. I think there's probably some value there. So I would lean maybe towards him being like a very, very late pick, as a team just wanting to make sure that they get him. Which that's kind of like what the 7th round is. I mean, it's just teams, not wanting to.
You're just playing prevent defense against everyone.
Yeah,
else
you don't want to get
you
don't want to get in the rat race for guys. So I'll go over. I think he gets picked late.
Yeah, I'm with Brunt on this. I think he's like a late 6th, early 7th round pick. I think Nebraska will have 2. I also agree with BC. I think there's some intriguing potential, undrafted free agents for Nebraska. I'm really interested in what happens with like a Garrett Nelson, if he's able to carve out a spot on a practice squad with a good training camp or something like that. I think he can. I think he can. My only hesitation is if he was like an inch or 2 taller, it'd be maybe a little bit easier to sell that as a potential defensive lineman there. But I think O'Shawn Mathis will get drafted. I'm pretty sure that Trey Palmer will as well. And probably 4th or 5th round for me with Trey Palmer. I don't think he's going to be a day 2 guy. But anybody want to call their shot as to where Trey Palmer ends up? You got a 1 in 32 chance.
Oddly specific NFL draft predictions.
Yeah, let's do it. Do you want me to pull up the pick list so you can line it up with a pick?
Yeah, give me where do the Raiders pick in round 5?
All right, looking up Raiders NFL draft picks.
You taking the Raiders just because they just take fast guys all the time?
They
or that
value
used
speed.
to be the knock.
Yeah.
The Raiders have 12 draft picks, which is tied for the Houston Texans for the most.
Where are they picking early on day 3?
I'm looking for the list. Day 3, they pick number 109. They have pick 100 in the end of round 3 or towards the end of round 3. They have pick 109, pick 141, pick 144, pick 174. That's through the 5th round. They start the 6th round with pick 204, pick 214, and then in round 7 they have 220 and 231. What Raiders pick are they going to use on Trey Palmer?
109 would be early day 3, right?
Early day 3, yeah.
Give me that.
All right, Brunt's is in on the Raiders.
Yeah,
BT, since we're doing this now, you got to pick a team.
Give me the 4th round Saints wherever they're picking.
All right,
going home.
4th round with the Saints.
Yeah. I'm gonna have Michael Severe texting me like the no receivers needed or something. I have no idea what this is.
He got after me this morning for mentioning that Zay Flowers could be someone that the Vikings end up with, and I learned that he had a high college drop rate. So, Severe always trying to get us the information. I know he listens to this show. We appreciate it. So the Saints
you get a text all says, "Do the research, dummy."
Yeah.
Anyway,
4th round Saints, yes.
So that's number 115.
There you go.
Number 115
we're circling it.
For the Saints.
We got it circled.
Lock me in. I'll be more fired up than ever if that happened. I mean,
can we get a live bet on that? Can we
that'd be one of those things you would want, like you would want to tell everybody, like and no one would care. It would be one of those things you're really excited about. Like my dad broke into the 80s in golf for the first time in his life yesterday. Shout out to Bruce Christopherson, shot an 85 at Shoreline. Our family is like ecstatic about it. Do you guys do you care? Probably not. You don't care, but man, that's what I would feel if Trey Palmer were 115 of the Saints.
He's probably walking around Omaha right now and be like, "Hey, how's it going today?" "Oh, well, I shot 85 yesterday."
Yeah. I was excited. I clapped for him. He drove the golf cart up, and I clapped for him as he took his hat and waved it at me.
Wow.
So it was nice moment.
Put me down. We're all just going to stay in round 4. We've got the Raiders. We've got the Saints. Give me the Ravens and their perpetual need for wide receivers at 124, round 4, Trey Palmer. So we'll see. We'll open it up.
What team's going to take O'Shawn?
Too. What's that?
What team's going to take O'Shawn? Who's going to take O'Shawn? You don't have to.
Okay, we're going to do this. All right. I'll go ahead and I'll say that the Atlanta Falcons at the end of the draft, and I now have to go look up the Atlanta Falcons picks. I know it's shocking I don't have all of this memorized, but
I'm going to say, while you're looking, I'm going to say Garrett Nelson ends up a free agent with the Minnesota Vikings.
Oh, wow.
Spielman's gone, though, right?
Any particular info that you can bring there for us?
No. That's just I said that like I did, though. I said that like I have a guy in the Vikings offices. I don't.
So the Atlanta Falcons pick 224 or 225, O'Shawn Mathis.
Okay.
Give me pick 207. I don't care who it is. That's where he's going.
I'm not even going to look it up. I'm just going to I'm going to wait until we get into the draft, and then it's going to be coming around to pick 207, and I'll send you a text to turn your TV on.
Yep. It's going to be like some like tight end from, I don't know, Troy is going to go in that spot.
Okay. So let's say for the sake of argument that it's Trey Palmer and O'Shawn Mathis. If I eliminated Quentin Newsome, who is the next person currently on Nebraska's roster to have their name called in an NFL draft? Because I think Newsome's a surefire NFL pick next year. But after that, I think it gets could get kind of wonky.
Well, Gilbert could entertain it, couldn't he? Technically.
Yep.
I'm not saying him though. I was just thinking out loud.
Is the correct answer Brian Buschini?
The correct answer what?
Is Brian Buschini in that conversation?
He could be your answer. You could definitely take Brian Buschini. I think maybe an average of 2 punters a year get drafted. So you're leaving yourself, he's got to be one of the top couple guys there.
I'm contractually obligated to choose a tight end, so I would go Gilbert. But I think, I don't know, would Luke Reimer, does he have a strong enough year in a 3.35 to do something?
I don't know if he's big enough, but he could be a decent special teams guy too.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah,
I feel like we have this conversation every year, and it's I don't know.
That's because we're in this cycle where Nebraska has about 1 or 2 guys getting drafted every year. So trying to get you to throw that dart right now.
What if it's Jeff Sims?
I mean, Anthony Richardson's being discussed as a first-round caliber quarterback, and he had a salty 54% completion percentage last year. So I think Jeff Sims' athleticism and the fact that he's someone that, as Matt Rule said, NFL scouts were already sort of drooling over his tools. So if he has a good year, I mean, it's a possibility. I would put it as somewhat unlikely, but I think you can make a pretty strong argument about every name that anyone's going to say. So.
Yeah.
A guy like Miles Farmer's only a junior, but he's been around the program a long time. So this is not like trying to force guys out the door by any means, but we are in that point where because of the COVID year, I feel like, juniors are seniors sometimes basically now. It's like they've spent their time in college. Let's see what's at the next level. I think Farmer has NFL possibilities, and I think there's people on the staff who believe that too. But he's a guy that if things went right for him, he could be in the conversation.
Why not Billy Kemp? Why not 3 straight years of your 1-year transfer portal wide receiver making it to the NFL? Billy Kemp, late round pick as a punt return guy, special teams player as well. Maybe could be a gunner for you, getting value out of your 53-man roster. Put me down for Billy Kemp.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Any other things you guys want to hit on here today before we throw it to Nebraska baseball and Michael Brunts to bring us all home?
No, just make sure you write down all these draft predictions so people really can take them to the bank.
Pick 207. We got the Saints for Trey Palmer, the Ravens and Raiders for Trey Palmer, O'Shawn Mathis to the Falcons, and Garrett Nelson to the Vikings after the draft ends. So those are all of the primary predictions that can be discussed on the next podcast. All right, Brunts, explain to me, was the South Dakota State loss the worst midweek loss of the year?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Without question.
All right. I just wanted to confirm my suspicions.
You fall behind 7-0 to a team that give South Dakota State some credit. That was their 11th straight win. They hit well, but yeah, I mean, Nebraska just they played a good game against Omaha on Tuesday and just looked disinterested as all get out on Wednesday. And that's, after the game, you kind of the team gathers in shallow left and they discuss things. I mean, they were out there for 20 minutes last night, and I'm guessing it was not a lighthearted conversation that was being had. I mean, they're at the point now where, and they've been here for a while, the sweep at the hands of Iowa certainly, cemented that, but it was been there for a while. I mean, they're going to have to win the Big Ten tournament to get into the NCAA tournament. There's no getting out from the strength of schedule anchor that they have. So now they've got to qualify for Omaha and the Big Ten tournament. This is actually a sneaky big weekend against Minnesota. Like, you need to win this series, because if you don't, you're already starting like Big Ten tournament scenarios. And that's not a good place to be when you're only halfway through the conference season. I mean, we're not even in May yet. So they just need to find some pitching to improve. I mean, they didn't have a starter go 4 innings in Iowa, and the bats need to be a little bit more consistent. I mean, you saw it the other night or last night that just not enough situational hitting, and not working counts, just not competitive at bats. It was an opportunity last night to get some momentum going into a key weekend, and it's just one step forward, 2 back right now.
With the like, what do we make of this? Because this would sort of be the second just real kind of disappointing season coming off of that high point of the regional final against Arkansas.
Yeah, I mean it's tough. I mean they really reconfigured the roster this year, added more veterans, and I think when they're going to have to do it again going into the next season. I mean you're not getting Max Anderson back, you're not getting Bryce Matthews back more than likely. Same thing with Emmett Olson. I would be shocked if he's on the roster next year. And I think last year's team, and I think to a degree this year's team, I mean, you just don't have enough edge. I mean, you don't have guys that are just kind of, for lack of a better word, just red asses that get
red ass baseball boys
that get after opponents, that don't have letdowns in midweeks. So many of their best players are just quiet leaders, and that's just kind of been I think to their detriment the last couple of years. So they'll have to get that figured out. I mean, there's, like I said, I mean, still 20 games or so left in this regular season to get things turned around before they get to Omaha. But yeah, I mean, it's the inconsistency, I think, has probably been the most frustrating thing, where you go and win a big road series against Michigan, and then just, with kind of a similar opportunity against an Iowa team that's actually pretty good and probably an NCAA tournament team, just looked completely overmatched all weekend. So it's definitely a program right now that needs to get some things figured out. That's for sure.
BC, anything you want to
add? No, I was just listening intently to Brunts, and I thought he summed up what's going on well with baseball. Nice job, Brunts. I'd like to congratulate you on that.
Oddly specific baseball prediction. When will the Oakland A's win their 10th game of the year?
How many wins are they?
They got
right
5.
Now?
They
got 5 right now.
When do they play Cleveland next? Because Cleveland's just giving away wins.
I need a date. When is it going to be?
I think they're going to get there by May 11th.
I'll go May 8th.
I think it's going to be.
I don't even know if they play on May 8th.
May 23rd. Like, we're looking at June.
Their pitching is horrendous right now. It's real bad.
Some fun, exciting young players, but I think we might be looking at starting to turn. We might be making Memorial Day weekend plans before they get to 10. So put that down with the NFL.
The other stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Do either of you watch MLB Big Inning?
Sometimes.
My team doesn't have them.
Well, MLB Big Inning, for those that don't know, it's sort of like the Red Zone version of MLB TV. Like, they'll do a quad box. I've enjoyed it. The other day I meant to text you, Brunch. The guy who hosts it was getting after the A's for keep calling up these pitchers and putting them in positions where they really haven't gone through like the high level of minors. And he's like, "Oh yeah, okay, here, great. Go work through all of your issues against the Angels on national TV and in front of all of these people. You pitched in high A. You're clearly good enough to move up." And he was like getting after him. I was curious how you feel about this.
No, more people should. I would wholeheartedly support
baptism by fire for the Brunches.
More. Well, no, I meant I was going to say I appreciate national people getting after the A's. I want more of that.
Sorry, I misunderstood.
If a guy's throwing 100, put him in there. What the hell?
The last 2 games, that's what they've done. It's been a bit of a struggle. So, all right. Anybody have anything they want to close this thing out with? We're at 50 minutes.
No, I'm done.
I don't know how we got to 50 minutes on either of these things, but we made it. Congrats to us. Wonderful podcast. Great work today, guys. We really brought it.
Yep. Back to Portal Vigil.
All right. This is the Husker247 Podcast. For Brian Christopherson, Michael Brunson, I'm Mike Schaefer. Be sure to check out everything we got going on at Husker247.com. Plenty of portal news to be covered. Some draft news coming this weekend. Some recruiting news. As always, there's always things going on in the recruiting world. And all of that can be found at Husker247.com. We'll be back next week with another podcast. We'll catch you then.